Thanks, Tish, so much for that gracious introduction. I'm so happy when we can actually meet expectations. So I'm glad that we set them appropriately and meet them. You know, it's unfortunate that Ori is not in here, although he said that he is watching this over video. We have had the honor and privilege of sponsoring and attending this event for the last 6 years, beginning from the very first one. And I really I wanted to commend Ori, Tish, and team for all the work that they have put in to make this happen. And just like we started early in this, and I started in Qualcomm, you know, Tish and Ori have really been visionary. And if you guys know them, you know how hardworking they are and persistent and passionate. And it's really people like this that make industries develop into what this one is becoming. So even though he's not here, let's hope he's watching on video. I'd like to give him a round of applause. So great job, Ori. You will hear about it when you watch the video afterward. So I'd like to start off by doing a little bit of a retrospective for the last 6 years and talk about where things are now and what growth has looked like just on AR and mobile, and then talk a little bit about what's happening in the forward-looking space. So as we look back to the first year when we made available the Vuforia SDK, I want to show you some numbers. Our first year in 2011 was 5,000 developers. 2014, this is actually our fiscal year data, and we haven't completed calendar or fiscal 2015, 45,000. So there are now in excess of 150,000 developers registered for Vuforia. And look at that CAGR. These are remarkable growth rates. Apps, you know, when we first started out, there were some very simple games played on tables for Android devices. 100 apps, 2014, 7,000, huge growth. And then consumer traction on app installs. We thought we were doing amazing getting started in this industry with 100,000 app installs. Last year, 75 million. And that will absolutely grow and is growing further. So today, there are now tens of thousands of apps, hundreds of thousands of developers, and hundreds of millions of app installs. So while we have not reached large-scale consumer adoption, we are certainly on the cusp of it, and we've done some pretty amazing work. So this is because of our efforts, but more because of your efforts that have been building the applications that's made all of this go. So when I would do these kind of events, or when I was on panels 4 and 5 years ago when we were starting this out, one of the common questions we get, I think I got it in this very room, what's the killer app for AR? What are people going to do with this stuff? And we had some ideas about what things were going to be, but we're not getting that question anymore. And in fact, we know exactly where AR is delivering and creating value on mobile today. And I put this in 3 really broad categories to try and to paint some broad strokes. But in interactive products, now in this bucket, I'm placing all of the apps that consumer product marketers and manufacturers have made to create some sort of interactivity between an app and some kind of product. Huge amount of traction here. This is where we've seen and heard about some applications that were described as being gimmickry. And were some of them gimmickry? They absolutely were gimmickry. But that is not unique for AR. There are many technologies used by marketers for gimmickry or gimmicky kinds of experiences. I think the important thing here is that we continue to see sustained use by marketers who are building more and more applications, and they're using AR and vision for what it does well. For example, toy manufacturers and others that are creating products that work specifically with their physical products or toys. Next, shopping. So you all have proven that you can increase conversion rates for purchase of goods from the home if you have the ability to visualize a photorealistic 3D model of that product in the environment that it will be used. No doubt we're able to create value, and that has been working. And then finally, instructional. And instructional is a very broad category, and that spans all the way from consumer to enterprise. But the best example we've seen recently in consumer actually has been happening in China. And it's using AR to help teach kids English. So there's apps that are working with various types of trading cards that present different objects or animals as 3D models, and then play back what that object or model is in English to the child. So tremendous educational value on the consumer side, and then I think you're all very familiar with what the enterprise applications are also, which in various forms is providing some kind of instruction or guidance. So again, the applications are clear. We understand where value is being created, and we're delivering that value. But something else has happened in the last year, and that is tremendous investment in stuff that goes on your head. And this is very, very different than where we sat last year. And I think this really got started. This thing have a laser pointer? No. Really got started on the far left when we saw Facebook's purchase of Oculus. A lot of dollars that went into that, and I think there was a lot of head scratching at first from what people knew about Oculus. But then, as we saw subsequent investments happen in the year with Google Cardboard, Magic Leap, Gear VR, we got a little bit more of an idea of what was going on. But from my perspective, what happened here is the industry has validated that this thing that goes on your head, whether it's a VR or an AR device, that is absolutely being viewed as the next consumer computing platform. And it's uniquely legitimized, I think, solely by virtue of the amount of dollars and the parties who are investing them in these. And if we do fail at this, I will tell you, it will not be for lack of investment, and it will not be for lack of a lot of very smart people working on the problems. So why so much money? Why billions of dollars? We're all talking about like this was craziness and Google Glass was a failure, and why all the belief now? Where'd the religion come from? Well, I'll tell you, for those of you that haven't had the chance to hear some of these folks speak or read all the articles, there's a belief that this device on your head not only has the potential to replace your smartphone or your primary computing device, it's got the potential to replace anything with a screen. So your laptop, for example, that you're sitting there typing on Evernote, I don't need that laptop anymore. If I can virtualize a laptop screen in my glasses, and I can just type on air or on a surface with my fingers, and this screen behind me, do we really need that? If we all have glasses and we can look up here and see the exact same thing? Or TVs. I don't need a TV. A TV for me can be any place on a wall in my house that I just want to project video. So this is really why this is so exciting and so potentially disruptive. This device on your head really has the potential, and I want to emphasize potential, to make the rest of the devices a little bit irrelevant. Now let's be clear, we do not have all of the enabling technology to make this go today. But we can see a trajectory to get there, and I think all the dollars headed in this direction indicate that others believe we can make it happen. So another thing that we've been hearing recently is, well, we know you're doing AR, but this is VR, and what's the difference between AR and VR? And Ori even mentioned this morning in his introductory keynote, well, we're going to have this big AR versus VR debate. And I would really encourage you to think of AR and VR as two sides of the same coin. They have very similar technology stacks, but actually a very different level of immersion. AR has the ability for us to enhance the real world. VR gives us the ability to replace it. And as it turns out, this is a big opportunity for us today, because with these new low-cost viewers, as you've seen with Gear VR and now with Google Cardboard, you can do both AR and VR on the same device and even in the same app. And I'd like to show you a couple examples. Who recognizes this thing? Who had one as a kid? Okay, me too. I loved it. This was probably my first experience with 3D. I remember it vividly. If you haven't already seen this down at the Vuforia booth, this is the new Mattel Viewmaster. It looks kind of like the old Viewmaster did, except it's a little bit different. It's a plastic viewer that's based on the cardboard spec, and inside that is a smartphone. And then the reel that you see here, I think we called them discs back in the day. This is now called an experience reel. So what happens is you take your smartphone, you put it inside the viewer, you hold it up, you put the experience reel on the table. And then once you're looking through the device, you'll see little iconic representations of photospheres that appear on top of the reel. And that actually happens in AR. And then when you click the little button on top of the Viewmaster, it will teleport you inside of that photosphere, and now you're in a VR experience looking around. So really, really well done. If you guys haven't had a chance to see it, it's actually being shown for the very first time outside of Mattel at this show. And this will be shipping as a commercial product this October. The Viewmaster device is going to be $30. It'll actually come with one of these experience reels, and there'll be separate experience reel packs available for purchase. So really great example of what can be done when AR and VR are fused together to create a new experience. And you'll see there as you go through, there's different icons you can click on inside those photospheres so that you can get more and more information. So the next one I'd like to show you is it's actually an example, very common example of what people have been doing with Vuforia. We see a lot of interactive materials that are created for use for sales purposes, whether that be an interactive brochure for a car, or maybe it's an interactive brochure for an apartment complex, or even commercial real estate. And typically what's done is you'll have an app that allows you to visualize the car after you built it. You guys have seen the apps, change the color, change the wheels. And then for buildings, you can take the roof off the walls and go through them. But it turns out these things are fun to look at from the outside, but it would also be really cool if you could get inside, and instead of looking outside in, look inside out. Well, you can do that when you combine AR and VR and use Vuforia, for example, with the cardboard SDK. So let me show you an example here. So this is an opportunity today, and I think as you see more and more of these low-cost viewers, cardboard and the like, this will become a more and more compelling piece of functionality to add to AR applications on phones. Now, there's another benefit that you're going to get with combining vision and VR, and this is actually something you can do with Vuforia that will help you in VR and AR, and that is to provide a means for user interaction where you can hold an object in your hand to manipulate content. So if you think about an application that might let you look at a product or inspect or rotate something, you can hold a cube or other object in your hand that becomes tracked as we would in AR, that then becomes a proxy or even a controller for what you might do in a VR experience. So just a few examples of what happens when we add VR to the creative palette for building AR and VR hybrid applications. So to wrap up, I know this is a quick one. I think I just got my time. Amazing progress that we've made in the last 6 years with AR and mobile. And in the last year, as I mentioned before, I think the industry has absolutely legitimized this next generation of device on your head as a mass market consumer phenomenon at some point in the future. And finally, I'd like to encourage all of you to think about how you can combine AR and VR for experiences today. Thanks, Tish. One or two questions? Okay.
Hello.
There it is.
Tim Merrill from DigiCapital. How do you see AR and VR changing the way that silicon's going to be developed in terms of custom chips to actually do more of what you're talking about?
Yeah, so I can tell you one thing. I mean, VR right now is absolutely, and AR too, are pushing the power and thermal limits of chips that we have for smartphones. So one of the realizations we've had is we absolutely need to have dedicated cores that are specialized for computer vision loads that can give us the increased performance while at the same time lower power consumption. And you'll see some of that coming in our upcoming Snapdragon 820. Then you're going to bring out the hook? Okay.
I got here a little late, but I was wondering, did you mention Mirasol and plasmonic displays during your talk, or is this something you wanted to mention? Display innovation, where Qualcomm is on that, and how they feel it figures in?
No, I did not talk about it. I don't think Mirasol is a relevant technology in the AR and VR context. What will be important, though, is to get much higher resolution and high density displays so that we can do things like virtualized computer screens in a VR or AR experience that's very close to your eye.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Tish.
Yes.
Thank all of you.
Thank you.